As soon as we start talking about energy, it's like, wah! Okay,
There's
here
a
we are.
ghost in the machine.
And we're back. Yeah.
If the plant starts moving behind you, like Paranormal Activity, just I'll do this.
Just let me know. Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good. um, yeah, so we were talking about energetic foundation, and I think the last thing you were talking about was like putting grids behind things. What is that for?
Oh, so my Feng Shui master, I have a Feng Shui master, and his name is Nate Batoon, and he is from Hawaii. And he studied with Grandmaster Lin Yun, who is the guy that brought Black Hat Feng Shui to the West um, from Tibet. And so my Feng Shui master, being Hawaiian, founded the Tibetan Hawaiian School of Feng Shui here in Southern California. And he and his son helped create these. It's basically like a bagua flower or a bagua daisy, which bagua, by the way, you mentioned it before, means eight. Ba means eight, gua means sides or areas or points. So that like the octagon shape. And then, of course, in Western Feng Shui, they separated out the family and the health area. So there are now 9 areas, which is why you mentioned that before. So the 9 areas of life can be represented with color, black, blue, green, purple, red, pink, white, gray, and gold.
Mm-hmm.
And then so he's created these like 8 bagua shapes around a golden sun.
Mm.
And then there are these yin yang symbols placed into the center of each of them to create balance for those areas of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are arrows radiating out like they are radiating this positive balance energy to all corners of our home. And so he created this so that they could be placed into spaces, underneath things, hidden behind things, to help create this energy grid. Think of it as like a smooth running system of traffic, that
Yeah.
or direct, airplanes or something like that,
Like,
where basically things go where they need to go, things flow, things
yeah.
don't pool or get stuck, things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
What's built into the design work that I do day to day that comes from feng shui? Like, without me even telling you about my process, I'm sure that you can tell me what I'm integrating into my design work that's built on feng shui that comes out of feng shui. Does anything like pop into your head from that?
There's a concept in feng shui called command position,
Mm-hmm.
power position, or command position. And we culturally are aware of that from the standpoint of, you don't want to sit with your back to the door in a restaurant,
Yeah.
right? Some might think of movies like The Godfather, and if you think about like where would The Godfather sit in a restaurant, The Godfather would sit at the head of the table in the back of the restaurant with a solid wall behind his head,
Yeah.
2 tall consiglieres on either side,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to see everything out in front of him. Everyone that the flow of energy is to come kiss the ring, right? So in ancient China, there was a philosophy built around where do we best build our cities and where do we best build our graveyards. And a lot of that is because people were studying like how nature impacts life. There was this idea that people lived near the water supply because it was the source of life for them. And it's where all of their opportunity came. It's where their food came from. It's where they washed their clothes. Water was life, which is
Mm-hmm.
so interesting that that's coming full circle. Last year, with the Dakota pipeline, water is life is the phrase that, um, we were being reminded of by native tribes.
Right.
So people lived in harmony with the river until the rivers overflowed and carried their homes downriver, and they realized, oh, it's unsafe to live so close to the river. So they moved themselves all the way up to the top of the mountain. And at the top of the mountain, they're like, this is great. We can see the whole valley from here. Yeah, it's a pain to go all the way down to get our stuff from the river, but at least we're safe from the pesky water. But then the winds came from the north, these cold Siberian winds, and figuratively or literally blew their homes off the top of the cliff and went, ah. So they found out that living with their homes halfway between the wind and the water was the optimal thing, with a mountain at their back, rolling hills off to the sides, and water at their feet. So that's Feng Shui, wind, water, the balance between the invisible and the visible.
Yeah.
And those things are the two most powerful energy forms on the planet. You know, how long can we go without water? How long can we go without air? So they decided, okay, we should build our cities with mountains at our back and rolling hills on the sides. This way, nobody can come and maraud on horseback and kill us. And they also found that they wanted to keep it open in front of them so they could see everything. So that's where they built their graveyards. It's where they built their cities. And that was command position. Well, this they found played out over time in like these caves in Croatia in like 200 AD. They found that when people spent the night in these caves, if they were in the path of the door, the mouth of the cave, they were wiped out. And if they decided, well, let's not be in the path of the door, let's be just around the corner, right near the entranceway, they were wiped out. And the only people that survived were the people that were in the back of the cave, seeing the entranceway, but with a wall at their back. So now we can start to draw an arrow directly between ancient Chinese origins of Feng Shui, these caves in Croatia, and the Godfather. And so when you go to a restaurant or when you set up your home, you want to think about command position. Where do I put my bed? Where do I put my desk? Where do I spend the most time? And do I want to be in an empowered position or a weakened position? Because biologically, we now know that if our back is exposed, our fight or flight reflex might get triggered, therefore causing
anxiety,
shoot up, norepinephrine, and then we can't relax properly.
Yeah.
So that's one way that Feng Shui is deeply embedded in probably your relationship to space on a daily basis.
Yeah. Certainly. I mean, we could talk about foo dogs all over the city of Philadelphia and New York, and I'm sure all over the country. There's lions on either side of a stairway. What else?
So protecting the home is a universal thing. And that's when I fell in love with Feng Shui, is when I realized it wasn't an ancient Chinese thing, but was universal. So during this time of year, when we think about, Passover, the concept of Passover, the idea was, okay, there are these spirits that can come to your home and take the life of your baby. Part of a religion. And so smearing lamb's blood, red, over the doorway was a protective mechanism so that no spirits would come and take the lives of these children. And so that ritual might be very similar to painting our front door red now, or placing a mezuzah, or placing foo dogs, or placing lions like at the New York Public Library, or gargoyles at Notre Dame Cathedral. And so the idea of protecting the mouth of chi, or the entranceway, is universal. And so that's another way that you're already pointing out. People are doing Feng Shui
without even knowing it.
Through many different cultures, without even knowing it.
Built in,
Yeah.
Totally built in.
Evil Eye, Hamsa, Archangel Michael, God bless this home, beware of dog, whatever.
It's so interesting how these things are built in. We're not even aware of them. We just operate from a place where it just is, It's so interesting. It's like social norms, I guess.
For sure.
I'm sure if we brought in an archaeologist to come in and sit in and have a discussion with us, we could go down a whole rabbit hole, right?
Oh, I'd love it. That'd be great.
So cool. What are your thoughts on the bagua mirror that sits over top of your door, with the convex mirror and like the 8 sides that sort of reflect things out? Do you use those? Do you you were saying that your master has something. Is that similar to that?
Different purpose. So one is setting up the energy grid to balance the 9 areas of the space, and those
Mhm.
mirrors are designed to protect the entranceway, very similar to the other cures we just talked about.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of them aesthetically. I'm not a big fan of them as being the only thing that we can do
Sure.
to affect the energy of our home.
As like,
Things also don't need to be seen in feng shui to work. So you can buy an octagon shaped beveled mirror
mhm.
and place it up hidden behind a piece of artwork or aiming at your neighbor who's loud or any number of things. But it's so interesting you brought up mirrors because my introduction to feng shui 20 years ago was I'm really interested in this. And so I wanted to devour all the books I could get my hands on. And I started to notice that there was a conflict about mirrors in multiple books. So some books said, never place a mirror in your entranceway because it will absorb all the negative energy from your neighbors.
Hmm.
And then another book said, have a nasty neighbor, point a mirror towards them, and it will deflect the energy away from your home towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I went to my feng shui master and said, what's this about?
Yeah.
And, it doesn't make sense to me. Why are two books totally saying the opposite thing? And he said, well, mirrors are very interesting because not only are they aesthetic to us on a design level, but they have an energy to them.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you place behind a mirror radiates out into the space. So for actors, often I'll have them put their headshot up behind a mirror because nobody wants to put a headshot up so that people can see it in their home.
Right.
But they want to put out the energy of working as an actor into the world.
Yeah.
If you have a nasty neighbor, I might write a note on the back of the mirror and point it towards them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like, darn you, nasty neighbor person.
Yeah.
It could be like, hey,
Mind your
I'm
own
rubber, you're
business.
glue. Yeah, it could be like umi-goominess, like, hey, let's all get along.
Yeah.
It could be like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like, I want to move you out. I've moved multiple units out of a building that I've moved into before when they were not in harmony
Wow.
with each other. And that is something that needs to happen. But it's never, for me, and for the kind of feng shui that I was taught and then I practice,
Yeah.
that never is like weird voodoo, like I'm trying to put curses on you.
Yeah.
It's always, hey, I want to invite you to have a better life, just not here because this is not working. It's not win-win.
Right. Win-win or no deal. Stephen.
Win-win or no deal. Yeah. So as far as those mirrors go, I'm not a huge fan of the way they look.
Yeah.
So I don't often incorporate them. And so many people come to me and say, do I have to put a weird ancient frog with a coin or that statue warrior or whatever? And
Yeah.
my answer to them is no. There are a
Yeah.
lot of ways to accomplish the same goal.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
What does it mean to just balance energy to create quality of life? I mean, we talked about intention before. I guess I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on, one step past like setting up a space for a certain purpose,
Yeah.
that incorporates, feng shui principles. Like, can you just talk a little bit about, what that looks like in terms of
Yeah.
the physical process of what it's like to like balance a space?
Sure. So 3 layers to that immediately come to mind are, number one, you're already doing it. So, Christina, if you were really hot and you were in a space, what would you do?
Turn on the air.
Turn on the air. Good answer. Survey says ding, 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 ding. Take off a layer of clothes, turn on the air conditioning, lower the blinds, whatever we need to do to balance the space for optimum wellness. So everyone's already doing this. That's not a hard concept. The second layer to that is, we may come to a space that has a long hallway. Or we may come to a space that has a stairwell.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is like a long hallway with nothing in it is like an energetic luge.
Yeah.
It's just like, energy moves real fast.
Yeah.
So they say
And you
things
like
like, oh,
be in there, right? You're like, ugh, get me out of here.
I may not. Yeah, you're right. If I was 7 and I have a lot of energy, I might just want to run up and down the hallway. So I might like to be in there. But you're right. I don't want to be in that fast moving energy. I want to slow it down a bit. So things you can do in the hallway are put in a runner that has a color that can help slow it down, or artwork on the walls to capture your attention. There's a feng shui principle that says energy flows where attention goes. So if I'm walking down the hallway and something captures my attention, I'm not just marching towards my destination.
I've seen that in
And
airports.
in airports,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
totally.
they have these huge, long hallways and they have to connect people with the environment. And I see them doing that now.
New
When,
York subway system, another
Mhm,
great example.
mhm.
They put artwork every so often, and somewhere in between the advertisements on the actual subway, they now have like poetry in motion and things
Mhm.
like that. So
Yeah.
you're right, like long spaces designers have figured this out and said, hey, we need to break it up. We
Yeah.
need to give people a respite from the monotony,
It's like
and
a
we need to
great
do something to capture
example.
people's attention.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great example about how feng shui and design like coming together. Perfect example.
yeah,
Yeah, but
totally.
continue.
Oh no, and I was just going to say like stairwells. So the idea is like when stairs face the front door, there's this
Hmm.
idea of that's a disease. Our home has stairs facing doors disease, and the energy can tumble right straight out the front door, which often leads to either financial tumbling or I'm always in the go. Like I never stay home. I'm always like running out the door, because what's going on in your space is going on in your life.
Yeah.
So we might need to do things to change the energy around stairwells. So I've seen people stagger artwork up the stairwell. I've
Mhm.
seen people write and put intention on the steps, the front part of the steps. Like I've seen it in my clients' homes out here, but then I go to like the Ace Hotel, Midtown New York, and I notice the same thing,
Yeah.
that they wrote things on the. So again, I don't know, is that because of feng shui, or is it just something that's in the zeitgeist that we incorporate because it's cool?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, in Philadelphia, we have what we call row homes, and they're all, unless you're in a condo or a new construction property, and even a lot of the new construction properties, they're still set up really similar, where you
Yeah.
come in and there's a stairwell, but especially a staircase, but especially in the older homes, which
Right.
tons and tons of them. It's a huge city. So, they basically all have the same floor plan. They're like 14-foot wide, 16-foot wide, or 18-foot wide houses. They all are like the same distance from the front to the back, give or take 10 feet or 5 feet. And then, it's a staircase that goes up, and they're 2 or 3-story level houses. And of course, you either have a staircase on one side and a door on the other, or vice versa, or they're in
Right.
line with each other, the staircase
Right. Right. Right.
door. So I run into that all the time. And even the house I live in right now, the door is in front of the staircase, and I've installed a vestibule door with glass lights to slow that energy down, and
Great.
I've got
Yeah.
like a mirror and like a little bench where shoes go, and little flower pots on the stoop, so that energy doesn't just like fly right out. So it's totally true. I've totally used it and done it, and it makes a difference.
And there are cultures that are steeped in this. If you go to Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
you will never find that, the front door facing the elevators. There was actually I had a conversation with someone in the Hamptons a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of um, like a design crew to recreate the Matrix, a scene from the Matrix in a commercial.
Yeah.
And the idea was, there was this scene in the Matrix where Keanu Reeves and Carrie, Moss come into the lobby, and then they start shooting things up and have this whole thing where they come through the metal detector, and they wanted to visually recreate that. And these guys scanned 50, 60, 70, 100 locations in Hong Kong looking for where the elevator doors open and face the front entryway. And
They couldn't
somebody finally said to him, "You're never going to find that here because it's a feng shui no-no."
Yeah.
And people pay millions of dollars to have feng shui masters come to look at a building before they open the doors so that energetically they're set up for business and success. Like that's how important it is culturally there. So,
Totally.
for us, we're just getting started
Yeah.
in terms of like
100.
how much feng shui can affect our lives.
Yeah. So you just mentioned a feng shui no-no. What is like feng shui hell, HE double hockey sticks? What is like, what are some no-nos that are easy for, people who are watching this to kind of say, "Oh, maybe I do that." And like what's a quick solution? Any of those off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on. What's great about this conversation is we're sort of like touching on big, broad strokes,
Yeah.
but it's always so helpful if we're talking about a specific thing. So if somebody says to me, I'm single, HE double hockey sticks looks like you're advertising being single around your whole apartment.
Yeah.
So, for example, I notice a lot of single ladies, which is great in the song, like all the single ladies, all the single ladies. Not great when you're single and don't want to be single. And I think I went into someone's home and counted like 43 single images as we walked through.
Yeah.
She had no idea. She's like, oh, but that woman's lounging in like a sexy way. And that's like a stamp collection of the Queen of England. And I was like, cool, but you asked why you're single. Well, your space is screaming, I'm single. Your bed has one bedside table, one lamp, and a picture of grandma above the bed. So, like, what are you selling? You know?
I'm
So,
Yeah.
so that's like,
I have to interrupt you to tell you one thing.
yeah.
The first month I started dating my boyfriend, into like the second month, I was like, I need a nightstand. I was like, we just wrote a blog on this, so I need you to go to my website and read the blog, and we're gonna go get me a nightstand next week. It was so funny.
Yeah, because in Feng Shui, one night stand equals one night stands.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So that's one example of feng shui hell, and it really depends on like what feng shui hell you're in. If you're
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I want to sleep," going to Miami and working with people that are in the club scene, they don't want me to be setting them up to go to bed at 9 o'clock and have a great night's sleep. They want to entertain.
Yeah.
So who am I to tell them that their space is messed up and in feng shui hell? It's not feng shui hell to them.
Yeah.
To them, it's serving their purpose, need, and intention.